I had dived the Coral Sea for the better part of a decade before the morning. A great shark taught me what humility truly meant, and I have come to think that all those years of diving before it were only a kind of preparation, a long apprenticeship for a single lesson I could not have learned any other way. You can spend a lifetime around the ocean, can know its creatures by their scientific names and their habits and their place in the great machinery of the reef, and still understand almost nothing of what it feels like to be small in their world until the moment the ocean decides to show you. That morning, the ocean decided to show me. We had set out before first light, the way we always did when the conditions promised to be good, motoring out from the anchorage while the sky was still the deep, bruised purple that comes just before dawn. By the time we reached the reef shelf, the sun was lifting clear of the horizon, throwing long gold light across a sea so flat and so still it might have been poured from glass. There was not a breath of wind. The water lay utterly calm, and when I leaned over the side and looked down, I could see the reef shelf far below, with a clarity that almost frightened me. Every coral head and sandy channel laid out as though there were no water between us at all, only clear, bright air. Those are the mornings divers dream of, the rare days when the sea offers up its perfect visibility like a gift. And I remember feeling that particular quiet excitement as I pulled on my gear, the sense that something good was waiting down there in the light. It was meant to be a routine survey, nothing more. I had done hundreds of them. I would drop down to the shelf, move slowly along a set line, counting and recording what I saw, and rise again an hour later with my slate full of notes. There is a comfortable rhythm to that kind of work, a meditative quality, and I had no reason to expect that morning would be any different from the scores that had come before it. I slipped over the side, let the bubbles clear, and began my slow descent through that astonishingly clear water, the surface receding above me into a bright, shimmering ceiling, the reef rising to meet me below. For the first 20 minutes there was only the ordinary reef, and the ordinary reef is itself a kind of miracle, though familiarity had long since dulled me to it. I drifted along my line through the morning light, watching the parrotfish grind at the coral with their strange beaked mouths, the sound of it carrying through the water in faint rhythmic crunches. Wrasse flitted in and out of the branching coral, flashing their colors, darting after some small prize and vanishing again. A grouper hung in the shadow of an overhang, watching me with the sullen patience of its kind. I made my notes, moved along the line, and let myself sink into the quiet trance of the work, the small bright world of the reef unspooling slowly before me. The light came down through the clear water in long shafts, catching the drifting motes of life, and everything was as it should be, ordinary and beautiful and calm. And then the light dimmed. It was soft, almost gentle, the way the day darkens when a cloud passes across the sun, a sudden cooling of the bright water around me. I noticed it the way you notice any small change in a familiar place, with a faint reflexive curiosity, and I remember the precise moment my mind registered the wrongness of it, because there had been no clouds. The sky that morning had been a flawless dome of blue, not a wisp of white anywhere in it, and there was no reason on earth for the sunlight reaching down to me to falter. For a heartbeat I simply did not understand, and then some older, deeper part of my brain, the part that has been reading shadows on the water for as long as there have been creatures swimming in it, told me to look up. I tilted my head back, and I saw it. An enormous shape was gliding between me and the surface, blotting out the light. It moved with a slow, terrible certainty, the unhurried confidence of something that has never in its long existence had cause to fear anything, and the sheer size of it stopped the breath in my chest. It was vast, far larger than any creature I had ever met in all my years in the water, its body a long dark silhouette against the bright ceiling of the surface, its great tail sweeping in a slow and economical rhythm that carried it forward without the slightest sign of effort. For one suspended moment, a moment that seemed to stretch out of all proportion to the time it actually occupied, my heart simply stopped beating. Every animal instinct I possessed went rigid and silent, the way a creature goes still in the presence of something immeasurably more powerful than itself. I want to be honest about that moment, because it would be easy to tell this story as one of bravery, and it was not. There was no bravery in me. There was only a vast and total stillness, the freezing of a small thing that has suddenly understood its own smallness. I hung in the water and I did not move, and I watched the great shark glide above me, and I waited to learn what it would do. It did not come for me. That is the thing I have turned over in my mind 10,000 times in the years since. It made no move toward me at all. Instead it began to circle, a wide, slow circle that brought it gradually lower, and then a second circle, tighter than the first, and as it came around I saw its eye, a single dark eye fixed upon me, calm and ancient and utterly without panic, an eye that had been watching the reef in the open blue for longer than I could imagine, and in that eye I read no malice whatsoever. I had braced myself for aggression, for the sudden terrible acceleration that I knew such a creature was capable of, and it never came. What came instead was something far stranger, and in its own way, far more humbling. The shark was curious. It was studying me. It was with a patience that no human predator could ever match, taking my measure. I have thought a great deal about what it must have made of me. To that shark I was something it had perhaps never encountered, an awkward two-legged shape, trailing a stream of bubbles, neither quite like the prey it knew, nor like anything that posed a threat, a curiosity drifting in its water. And so it did what any intelligent old animal does with a curiosity. It investigated. It circled and it watched, gliding closer with each slow revolution, near enough at last that I could see the faint scars along its flank, the small remoras clinging to its underside, the slow flecks of muscle beneath its skin as it moved. I had never been so close to something so powerful, and I had never felt so completely at the mercy of another living thing. And yet, as the seconds stretched into a minute and then beyond, the terror in me began slowly to change into something else. It did not leave entirely, I will not claim that, but it was joined and gradually overtaken by a feeling I can only call awe, a reverence so total it left no room for anything else. Because I understood, hanging there motionless in the blue, that I was being permitted to witness something almost no one ever sees, the unhurried curiosity of one of the ocean's great creatures, given freely and without fear. I was in its world, I had no business there, not really no natural right to breathe and move in that water, and the shark knew it and I knew it, and instead of driving me out, it had simply come to see what I was. There was a strange grace in that, a generosity I had no claim to, and I felt my own racing heart begin impossibly to slow. I kept my breathing as steady as I could, though it thundered in my own ears, the rasp of each inhalation loud in the great silence of the deep water. I made no sudden movements. I did not try to flee, which would have been useless in any case, and I did not try to approach, which would have been foolish beyond words. I simply hung there and let the great shark finish its inspection, granting it the only thing I had to offer, which was my stillness and my respect. The minutes passed. The shark circled and watched and circled again, and the whole bright reef around us seemed to hold its breath along with me, and then at last it was satisfied. I saw the change in it before it happened, a subtle shift in the angle of its body, and then it tilted its great frame, gave one slow, powerful sweep of its tail, and slid away from me into the blue haze that marked the limit of my vision. It did not hurry. It simply withdrew, dissolving by degrees into the soft blue distance, its dark shape growing fainter and fainter until the haze took it entirely and it was gone, as quietly and as completely as it had come. The light returned to the water around me, the ordinary gold shafts of the morning sun, reaching down once more to the reef, and I was alone again with the parrotfish and the wrasse, as though nothing at all had happened. But everything had happened. I rose toward the surface slowly, observing all the careful discipline of the ascent even as my mind reeled, and when I finally broke through into the bright morning air I was trembling. It was not fear, or not only fear, though my body was still flooded with the chemistry of it. It was something far larger, the overwhelming knowledge of having shared the water, for a few brief minutes, with something truly magnificent, and of having been allowed to leave that water unharmed. My partner hauled me aboard and saw my face and asked what had happened, and I found I could not speak. I sat on the deck with the sun warm on my back and the sea flat and innocent all around us, and I simply shook and tried to take in what I had seen. In the years since, I have told this story many times, and I have noticed that people always want it to be a story about danger, about a brush with death, about the fearsome jaws of a monster, and I understand why. We have been taught to think of these creatures only as monsters, as mindless engines of appetite lurking in the dark to do us harm. But that is not the story I lived that morning, and it is not the truth of what I saw. What I saw was an animal of immense power and immense age moving through its own world with perfect ease, pausing in its day to regard a strange visitor with nothing more than calm curiosity, and then continuing on its way. There was no monster in that water. There was only a creature far older and far more at home in the sea than I would ever be, and a man who had spent a decade imagining he understood the ocean and learned, in a few suspended minutes, how little he truly knew. I still dive the coral sea. I always will, I think, for as long as my body allows it, but I dive differently now. I move through that water with a new understanding of my place in it, the understanding that I am a guest there, a brief and clumsy visitor in a world that was complete and perfect long before I arrived, and will go on being so long after I am gone. The great shark gave me that in exchange for nothing but my stillness, and I have carried it with me ever since, the memory of that dark, unhurried eye, and the vast, patient curiosity behind it, and the humbling, liberating knowledge that the ocean does not belong to us, and never did and never will.